cloud. Take it away, Michelle. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for that introduction, Thomas, and wonderful to see you, meet you, and indeed meet the rest of your class. So I'm going to share some slides. Is that okay that I can share my screen?
Oh, let me hold on. Let me hold on. I got to do this. I got to definitely make you. I got to give you the participation role. Hold on. Yep. Hold on. I'm sorry. Let me fix that right now. Okay, you are now co-host, so you can kick me out and take on over.
Oh, no, I'm not kicking you out. We're just going to share it together. So there we go. So I'm just going to share this and just check that you can actually see my slides, because I've got a few screens here. Can you see the big screen?
I can, yes, I can, yep.
Shall I admit people, Thomas?
Yeah, you can admit them too, yes, absolutely.
Okay, fine, okay. So, thanks for having me. I'm really delighted to be here. I'm glad we've got the time to sync this time. And I know that this is a subject Thomas is particularly passionate about because I was privy to your recent lecture on purpose as well. So, I'm excited to talk about sustainable marketing. I'm going to touch on what it is, why it matters, where to start, and why I think, and many others believe, it's an extraordinary opportunity and indeed a growing obligation for businesses to become a source for good. So the book that I wrote, which I think is a good place to start, is to why I wrote this book, is called Sustainable Marketing, How to Drive Profits with Purpose. I wrote it with two other marketers, Gemma and Geraint, and we are, traditional old-fashioned marketers that have been trained. And I suppose there were two challenges that kept coming up for us around the conversations when we were, we all do various talks, we all do various writing and training and consulting. And when we would get together, there would be these consistent themes. One would be about people not understanding the role marketing really has to play, and marketing being, having really lost its identity and not doing a great job on marketing itself. And the other was, of course, this increasing kind of discomfort around the role of marketing and the role it plays in the world when it comes to driving consumption levels, supporting and I suppose encouraging a kind of throwaway society, driving, get a new one, buy a new one, have another one, driving convenience at any cost. And of course, all of that creates unsustainable levels of waste. And of course, much of my career has focused on helping businesses grow. But of course, growth isn't infinite. And so all of those things were kind of bugging, not just me, but bugging them as well. And so we decided, well, let's just stop talking about it and moaning about it. Let's actually put something together so that we can share our viewpoints and really put a stake in the ground as to what sustainable marketing is, because there isn't really a definition about what is sustainable marketing. And of course, it's like, is there a definition about what is marketing? We've got Kotler's view, we've got various other views as to what that is. The Institute of Marketing here in the UK will have a view. The institutes and the various associations in other parts of the world have other views. And really, depending on who you speak to in industry, depending on where their role is or how they view marketing, you're going to get a different interpretation of what marketing is. So sustainable marketing, which I'll get onto shortly, is something that, as marketing professionals, as marketing students, you're going to recognize that you're going to be thinking potentially, well, this is just marketing. But for many, that isn't how they view marketing. So for sustainable marketing, we're not trying to rewrite the whole road of marketing. We're just trying to say, okay, let's rethink and let's approach marketing with a much more responsible lens. So utilizing marketing really as this significant role in having using its powers for good. So from a marketing perspective, we can shape new behaviors. Now, when I started out in marketing, I started out in advertising in the early 90s, working for Saatchi's. And I used to work on one of their cigarette brands for Silk Gallagher at the time. And I remember in the office that I worked with, there were posters around of all of these iconic cigarette advertisements. And, you know, it was incredible, really, even back in the 90s, to be looking at some of these ads about just how much they were encouraging people to smoke. There was the famous Camel ad around, you know, the majority of doctors choose Camels. So of course there was this almost alignment that, you know, it was healthy to smoke. There were ads on these walls with pregnant women being encouraged to smoke because it helped their nerves. And of course, now when we think about the social marketing and the cause marketing that's been done around changing behaviors around how we think and feel about smoking, there is no advertising anymore around smoking. And of course, it's seen as a pretty negative thing to do. So we can change behaviors when we are focused in the right direction. We can create new ways of thinking. We can start to question and champion, and when we're talking with product managers or product development or R&D, about, you know, how we're going to develop and design solutions to meet the needs of our audiences. That often can mean that we've got this opportunity to be jumping in and saying, well, you know, let's rethink some of this ways, or what happens with the end of life in that product? Who is responsible for that end of life of that product? And is there opportunity and economies, you know, to save costs by driving more of a circularity to the products that we are creating? We can use that voice and our reach to educate and inspire hope and indeed that behavioral change. It's not all about doom and gloom. We really have to be the visionaries here, showcasing a different way and a positive way for consumers and other stakeholders. And really, it's about getting back to the heart of what marketing is, just rethinking that approach with a more responsible lens, delivering on the needs of the customers, employees, and indeed the society at large. Because when we think about what marketing is that communication and connection interface between the organization and the outside world. We are that kind of connective lens. We're pushing out from the organization. I know you've been talking all about brand and brand management and aligning purpose and values. Well, it's those brand values that we're pushing to the outside world so that the customer can meet those values and align their values. And if we think about, you know, the brands that we favor and that we're loyal to, and we love, it's often because their values align with our values, or their values make us feel better about our choices and our consumption. And so that marketing there, pushing out those brands and those values, is an important transition from the organization to the outside world. And of course, we're doing that through communications, through campaigns, through various education. And we are also not just communicating out to those stakeholders, those employees, those customers, those partners, those investors potentially, but we are also the people responsible for listening to what is going on in the outside world, understanding the competitor landscape, understanding the changing needs of our stakeholders, our customers, our employees, our investors, our partners, understanding the shifts that are happening, and bringing that intelligence back into the organization so that intelligence can be acted upon, that we can actually design products and services to meet some of those challenges and meet those solutions, so that we can steer strategic endeavor in a meaningful way. So marketing is indeed that interface between the business and the outside world, understanding that landscape and bringing it in, but also then sharing that brand narrative and that messaging out into the world. So it's a connection. It's a two-way conversation. It's not this push, push, push. You know, we've just as much got to be listening and bringing that insight back into the business. So when I talk about sustainable marketing, then it really does have to start with, who are we as an organization? Why do we exist? Now, some would say, you know, is this brand purpose? I would say, is this why you exist? And I think we have to almost go beyond brand purpose and back to the existence of an organization to say, well, what is it that we are doing? What is it that we want to achieve in the world? And are we then making and keeping our eye on the ball with what that was all meant to be about? Or have we completely lost our way? And from a sustainability perspective, all organizations now really have to be thinking. I don't think there's one organization in the world that could rationally argue that it is a positive thing to do negative things to people and the planet just in the cause of driving more profitability. I don't think anybody would openly say that that is, you know, a positive thing that they're doing. So, of course, we all have to. Business has to kind of rethink its purpose in understanding that it isn't just about driving short-term shareholder profit and being reported on quarterly. It's now about that wider remit and thinking about how are we impacting people, how are we impacting the planet, and how is that, you know, driving profitability, and if we're driving profitability, are we doing so at any cost without even considering people and the planet? Because that is not sustainable. In a planet that's got, you know, finite resources, that is not sustainable. Of course, driving down then into the direction, bringing that insight and that intelligence from the audience back into strategic planning and back into that lens of the organization, aligning what we're doing as we move forward with the needs of what is going on, the needs and the values of those key stakeholders. And of course, that landscape is ever changing. And of course, it means that when we develop tactics, those tactics need to be more meaningful and aligned. We can't disconnect with what we're doing from what we say we're doing. And so our strategy has to be on purpose. We have to be doing what we say. And of course, that's what is now challenging and being challenged when it comes to communications, because brands and organizations are being challenged that they are not doing what they say, and they are purporting to do one thing, and it's not really what they're about, and therefore it's being called out as greenwashing. And of course, that greenwash isn't just about a campaign. That greenwash is about that not having that kind of genuine and transparent fit with the purpose and the endeavors that you are putting out into the world. So, for example, you know, there are 17 United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. If an organization, and many organizations now, and increasingly so, and we'll look at the BCorps in a moment, but they are focusing their attention on, okay, so how can we do better? How can we be better? How can we be, you know, not about more, but how can we be about better? And a good starting point is to look at those 17 goals and to think, okay, well, all right, let's look at sanitation. What can we do around sanitation around the world? Now, we may not be able to do anything because it doesn't strategically align with our business. However, perhaps we could just donate some money to a charity that is looking at sanitation. Now, the problem with that is that might be coming from a really good place, but from a purpose and why do we exist perspective, that could be seen as kind of purpose washing, because it's almost like you're trying to fudge in and say, well, look, we are really doing a good job, but actually it isn't baked into the heart and soul of what the business was all about. So there has to be some real caution around organizations thinking about purpose and how they become purpose driven. And for some of them, it's going to be easy because they've been purpose driven from the get-go. For others, it's about reversing into purpose, and it's about reversing into purpose where there is strategic fit and alignment, not just trying to fudge and think about, okay, let's look at all those 17s. It's about looking at those 17s and saying, which ones make sense for us? Which ones really fit and have natural alignment with what we're doing? Which ones can we really make a meaningful impact with and to? So, you know, that then driggles down into that comms. We have to avoid that greenwash, whether internally or externally, whether strategically or indeed as part of our campaigns. When it comes to purpose, it's worth asking organizations that question about, do they really have that purpose? From a marketing perspective, this survey, the purpose survey, the link isn't here, I'll share it with Thomas, but 76 of marketers believe that their organization has a defined purpose. However, only 10% of those marketers said that that purpose goes beyond their product service promise to include a societal commitment. So again, this could be seen as that kind of, yes, you know, we've got the purpose, but is it meaningful? Is it impactful? Is it something that you are using as a lens to operate through? Or is it just something that is rolled out on the annual report, or, you know, sits on a wall in the boardroom for people to look at and think about what they do? So a model that you may be familiar with is, of course, what was the 4 Ps, which has been extended into the 7 Ps as we've become more service driven. And this model is a great strategic model. And I think if we put purpose at the heart of this model, that starts to help us to really extend and create that kind of responsible, sustainable marketing lens around each one of these facets. Because if you think about each one of these facets, this is a strategic model for business. You're considering not just the pricing of your products, but you're also thinking about process and service delivery. You're also thinking about people. You're also thinking about the physical evidence, you know, your footprint, your physical footprint, and a number of different partnership aspects. So when I apply this sustainable lens here, and let's just say, let's take product, you know, in product, we're typically thinking about aspects such as the design and the usability, the usefulness, what problems these products are solving, the value this product creates, the quality aspects and the quality assurances of this product, the brand alignment with the product, and of course, assurances and warranties and guarantees and other practical things such as that. But of course, if we now apply this sustainable marketing lens to this marketing model, we also have to be thinking not just about the design and the technology, we also have to be thinking about, well, what happens with the end of life of this product? Who is responsible for who is taking responsibility for that? Are we engaging our consumers in a responsible way, or are we just getting them to buy more? Are we encouraging a more circular economy? Are we getting people to repair things, refill things, reuse things? Are we, you know, what role is it that we are giving the consumer in this? It's not just enough to be thinking about the product. We've now got a whole other lens to be considering. Similarly, if we think about pricing, you know, normally we're focused on how can we, you know, squeeze and make more profitability, but actually, you know, is it about more, or is it about better? And the better, more responsible lens would be talking about, you know, well, what aspects here when we're thinking about that pricing is, you know, is it okay to pay more for fair trade? Are we squeezing the supply chains so hard that we are actually really forcing down the quality and creating real hardships for those people that are part of our supply chain? Or do we have a fair and equitable supply chain that we can be proud of? And so it really starts to extend the conversation beyond what marketing's remit would ordinarily be. But actually, as a responsible marketer, these are the thorny questions that we really need to be asking, because as marketers, we have this incredibly powerful role of bringing that intelligence back, pushing that intelligence out, you know, developing attractive propositions, persuading, all of those aspects. We've got to use those skills to make sure that what we're doing within the organization is sustainable and is the right and decent thing to do. So it isn't just enough to follow the model and create, you know, these products without thought, without consideration for the impact that they have on people and the planet. So you can see that, I won't talk through every single one of those, but, and this is me just brain dumping. If we went and drilled into this and sat and brainstormed this, you would probably be able to come out with a whole load of other criteria that, from a responsible marketing perspective, around these aspects need to really be considered and drilled into when we are thinking about sustainable marketing. So, of course, the lovely Philip Kotler, who I interviewed on the Can Marketing Save the Planet, I haven't, had the opportunity of, Philip Kotler is 90. I'm not even sure if Mr. Levitt is still alive. So as a marketing field, are we part of the problem? And if we're part of the problem, and I would say we are part of the problem, I would categorically say we're part of the problem. We've been part of the problem for the last, 50 years or so, driving those consumption levels. I don't know if you've read this book, Thomas. I'm sure you probably have, but it's quite a frightening read, this Hidden Persuaders by
love that. That was the book that helped me get interested in marketing in high school.
It is terrifying to read this book.
I don't know how much truth is in that thing, but I definitely I was fascinated by it, and that's why I fell in love with marketing.
Yeah. So anyway, maybe it's something to pick up with your students, but I was reading this, and of course what it's looking at is how we deliberately have kind of driven these unnecessary behaviors and unsavory behaviors, really. So as a marketing field, are we part of the problem? And if we are part of the problem, then we should be changing our objectives to become part of the solution. And what, Kotler talks about is demarketing, this idea of deconsumption, or more sensible consumption. And to this end, marketing has to really undergo an identity crisis and really understand what it's all about. So for me, that identity crisis is this. That identity crisis is really looking at what it is that we do influence and breaking that out and applying a responsible lens to it to say, this is now how we need to be really considering the demarketing, the deconsumption. How can we be making this not growth at any cost, but how can we be better? How can we be better, and how can businesses and how can marketing be used as a force for good to really support and develop good business?
Michelle, where does branding fit in this chart here?
I would say, branding is right in the middle. That is your purpose. I would say that, if you've got your purpose clear, your branding and what you stand for, that kind of hearts and mind view of what you are in the hearts and minds of everybody else, because my view of branding is that, branding, who owns brand? And
not marketers.
And, who owns brand is anybody who touches that brand owns brand. Yep. And therefore that purpose is if all the organization can say is, this is what we want to do to exist. And they may have a logo, they may have some identifiers, but their purpose really is the brand. And if they do good business, that good business is what will live in the hearts and minds of the people. If they do something terrible and bad business, that is what will live in the hearts and minds of people. So they don't control brand. They don't control brand at all. The brand is really the living evidence of the purpose. And for me, it's how on purpose an organization stays is what determines whether or not they set out with a good intention or a bad intention, or they set out indifferently and are just going with the flow of it and now have to either reverse back, or they set out with intention to do good. If that makes sense.
What is your opinion on, we're a toothpaste and we want to make your world a better. I mean, some products try to make it sound like, they're doing world peace, but it's just like it's toothpaste. What's your feeling on that stuff?
Well, I just think that, I'm kind of with Alan Jope, of Unilever, who has said it's not enough to just have products out there that make your teeth whiter and your hair shinier. It's no longer, it has been, but it's no longer enough, because we've got to a critical kind of awakening, for want of a better word, where people are now questioning and saying, whoa, hang on a minute, my behaviors, what is all this pollution, when they're seeing those floating seas of plastic and huge, enormous amounts of plastic, and they're seeing those brand names all over those floating seas of plastic, and they now understand that, whoa, you mean that doesn't break down? Oh, you mean when I put that in the recycling, it doesn't really get recycled? People are becoming educated to the realities of what we've been hiding for so long, and of course, so it's no longer enough to do that. Now, it's going to be really difficult, because even for Unilever, and I've got some examples, coming up, they're saying that they're trying to transition all of their brand portfolio to have a purpose. And of course, that is going to be tricky for them, for toothpastes and various things and shampoos, because they are part of the product portfolio. So what are they going to do to solve that problem? We know that they are solving certain problems. They are looking at, developing more products with purpose, that save water, because they are antibacterial, and so in underdeveloped countries they don't need to use water, where water isn't in vast supply. And so there are these innovations, but I think we are at the beginning, really, of this transition. We're really, really at the beginning of this transition, because it's only really now that it's starting to cause a problem for organizations. So yeah, I agree with, I don't think I have an answer to say, what do people do? But what I do agree with is it's not enough just to make your teeth whiter or your hair shinier.
Yeah, and certainly Unilever is a leading light in this fight.
They are doing good stuff, but they've had a big problem. They've been a big footprint, and so they are, cleaning up the mess, for want of a better word. So
it's still better. At least they're doing that now.
But at least they are doing something, and they're a huge organization, and they're doing something with real momentum. So that is great. I've just purchased, actually, Paul Polman's book, Net Positive. This is meant to be a fantastic read, because what it talks about is it's how courageous companies thrive by giving more than they take. And so this is a very purpose-driven book. And but he's also uncovering a lot of what it took to turn around the huge tanker that is Unilever, because Paul Polman was really the pivotal piece in Unilever for the majority of the great work that they're doing. And so again, away from reduce, reuse, recycle, we have to start rethinking how we consume. We need to start to care. And I think this care word is underplayed, from marketing. We really need to start to care more about what's coming into our house and questioning, do I need it? Could I buy this in a different way? And I think marketing can be a fundamental driver in how people change the way they consume. And it absolutely can, because we're the ones telling people to consume. So if we educate and we not only just go back to the product, we've also got this great opportunity to be educating the consumer so that they too can make better, more informed choices, not bamboozling them with our packaging, not bamboozling them with eco claims, just being honest and transparent and clear with our communications. And if our purpose is right, then that brand narrative and that brand messaging and everything we do is really just talking about what it is that we do. And that is what is great about these kinds of organizations, because the B corporations, I'm a big fan of the B Corps. I don't know what your view is of them, Thomas, but I personally love them. In my view, I think every business should have to be a B Corp.
Yeah, I agree. You shouldn't be a business and not be a B Corp.
I agree. And, that should be the marker that all businesses are striving for right now.
Michelle, define B Corp for the students that don't know what that is.
Yeah. So the B Corps are a movement that are legally bound. So they've changed their operating structures to be legally bound so that they cannot just focus on profitability. They have to balance the way they operate by considering people and the planet as well as profits. Now, profits are not terrible. You know, profits, it's almost like at this point I say, oh, so profits are bad. No, profits are great. You want to drive a profitable business, but it's what you do with those profits. And B Corps are legally obligated to ensure that they have fair wages, that their governance, you know, their exec pays aren't overly inflated beyond whatever is going on within their organization, so that they are having to make sure that they are really considering the planet at the same time. So it's the triple bottom line. It's that triple bottom line of really looking after people, planets, and profit, not just profitability at any cost. They are more focused on the stakeholders than they are the shareholders. The stakeholders play as an important role and have to be considered as an equal to the shareholders. So that is a legally standing consideration. The other thing about the B Corps is they have this B impact assessment, which is a really granular assessment. It's really rigorous views, diving deep. It's almost like a quality control, quality assurance of how a business operates. And it's looking at everything through these people, profits, planet lens. And to become a B Corp isn't easy. You can't just say, yeah, we want to be a B Corp. You have to meet certain criteria. Now, Patagonia, who have been held up as kind of, you know, heroes in the triple bottom line, the people, planet, profits, and, you know, really championing and leading a number of initiatives like repairing for years and reusing and encouraging people not to buy, you know, don't buy this jacket, you know, rent it is one of their campaigns. You know, they are indeed a B Corp, as are, I think it's 65% of Nestle are on the B Corp trajectory. Unilever have a big percentage of their business that is on the B Corp. Well, it's not easy for certain organizations to get there because of the rigor that goes in. There is an assessment. So I encourage you to have a look at the B impact assessment. The B Corps are started out in the US, then moved to Canada, and now the UK is probably the fastest growing area for B Corps. There are over 4,000 businesses that are registered as B Corps in over 70 countries. And there's a great range of organizations that are B Corps, but they all hold the same values. And they have a fantastic manifesto, which is to do good on the planet, you know, to use business as a force for good. So here you've got Elvis and Cressy. They're a small luxury brand. They actually, all of their products are made out of reclaimed fire hose. So, you know, they noticed there was this problem with fire hose. It has to get circulated quite quickly because of the quality standards for using fire hose. So of course, this was a big problem in landfill. It doesn't biodegrade, of course, because of the substances that are used to make sure that it's strong. But of course, it's a beautiful material and they utilize it and reuse it. They have repair systems. And, you know, when I interviewed Cressy Wesling, she said, we don't have to do anything in marketing. We just talk about what it is we do. And everybody just kind of gravitates towards us because they love what we're doing. Another great brand that I really love is the Who Gives a Crap brand. Now, okay, they are, you know, good for your bum, great for the world. They're a loo roll company, but everything they do is sustainable. So these brands have started out with purpose right at the heart of what it is they are doing. They don't need to reverse into it. They've started out doing that from pretty much the get-go. And they do some fantastic work, whether that is, you know, Elvis and Cressy. Not only are they doing all of that, but they also donate 50% of their profits back into the people that are supplying the fire hoses, back into the fire services around the world. the Who Gives a Crap, not only is all of their products fully sustainable, fully recyclable, they have subscription services, so they are disrupting the market. And you know, everything is done as sustainable as it can be, and of course 50% of their profits are going into fixing sanitation. So they're not trying to solve all the 17 SDGs, but they realize that, you know, they have this alignment with, you know, solving certain aspects. And of course they're all very concerned about modern slavery. They've all got their supply chains nice and tidy and clean. And there is, you know, they are being responsible when it comes to those 7 Ps and that broader, wider lens. Because, you know, sustainability, a little bit like marketing, it is complex. And depending on who you speak to, there will be many different definitions of what is sustainability. What does sustainability mean for that business? And as I said, there are, like in marketing, there are lots of definitions. But I think what we can all be clear on is what unsustainable looks like. And, you know, if we've got any questions about, is this sustainable? I always like to flip it and say, is it unsustainable? You know, is it something that we just can't continue to do in the way that we've been doing? Because, you know, there's a great quote that I've got coming up that again by Alan Jope that very clearly kind of and succinctly shares that, frankly, in a world that's on fire or underwater, it's difficult to sell anything. So, you know, so it's all of our interests to really start changing things so that we do have the opportunity to have a world where we can actually operate business. So there's a lot of confusion about what is sustainability. Do consumers and buyers understand terms such as sustainable? Do they understand circularity? Do they understand net zero? Well, this search by Made in Britain, this recent research from Made in Britain, and I don't have a comparable one in the US yet, but this is a recent piece of research. Only 2% say yes, very well. And, you know, 12% say reasonably well. 16, they're saying not at all, and they feel misinformed. And 70% are saying not very well. So 86% there definitely need more clarity. And so who's going to give them that clarity? And my view is that the role of marketing is to educate the customer as much as it is to listen to their needs. It's also to be educating so they do understand circularity. So when I get my subscription through from Who Gives a Crap, I get information about the work that they are doing. It's on their packaging. It's in their kind of little postcard notes that they send to me to say, hey, Michelle, guess what? We're doing this right now. I get updates from them, and I'm interested to learn what it is that they are doing, because I'm invested now as a customer because their values align with my values. And I want to do good on this planet. And by buying their product, they make me feel like I'm doing a whole lot better on this planet, but they also tell me what they're doing. They communicate to me. They also tell me and educate me as to what I can be doing with the packaging, what I can be doing with the box, what I can be doing. Do you realize that this is totally dissolvable? Do you realize this isn't plastic? Do you realize this is this? Do you, you know, they're educating me as I consume with them. So if we know that 86% of those consumers aren't clear, and we know that marketing are the custodians of the consumer, then we have that remit. We are that lens to be educating through the products, through the messaging that we are sharing. And of course, those latest negotiations that have just come out of COP26, it didn't go exactly as everybody would have liked it to go. But, you know, I think we all relatively weren't that surprised that we can't expect governments to do everything for us. And now, as COP26 closes, as this article was saying, you know, businesses can really step in where governments have failed. And that means marketers within those businesses can really step in. And if business isn't clear on what it needs to do, well, that's the role of marketing, sustainable marketing, to be saying, This is what's going on in the landscape. This is what is really happening out there. This is why we now need to design and rethink that product or educate our customers in this way. And it may be that there's internal education that needs to happen as well. So, you know, Mark Carney puts this pretty succinctly: firms ignoring climate crisis will go bankrupt. You know, it is that simple. And of course, we know that customer demands are changing. I'll just whittle through these because these are probably things that you look at all the time, but consumers are asking for brands that focus on purpose. The Sustainable Brands and Harris poll found that 80% of people say they are loyal to businesses that help them achieve this good life, this better life. The Cone Porter Novelli survey found that 78% of consumers would tell others to buy from a purpose-driven company. I most definitely sit into that percentage. IBM's report, Meet the 2020 Consumers Driving Change, reveals that nearly 6 in 10 consumers surveyed are willing to change their shopping habits to reduce environmental impact. Now, they're willing to change their shopping habits, but of course, as marketers, we've got to educate them so they know what that means. They don't know what to change. They're looking at packaging and they're confused because what does that claim mean? What does it mean? What is circularity? Can I recycle this? Is this clear? You know, marketers have to get really clear and consistent about the messaging to the consumers. Over 70% are saying they would pay 35% more for brands that are sustainable and environmentally responsible. And the Edelman Trust Barometer 2021 has identified for the first time that business is the most trusted institution, above governments and for the first time above NGOs, with 61% trust globally. So business has also now become the only institution seen as both ethical and competent. So, you know, business really has that responsibility and to make the difference. So the other factor as to why this matters is because employee expectations are changing. Millennial survey respondents, 40% said they had chosen a job because the company performed better on sustainability than other choices, something that comparatively only 70% of boomers said they had done. So the younger generation coming through, you know, this matters more. So our future leaders, our future marketing directors, our future business CEOs. As for employee retention, 70% of millennials said that they would stay with a company if it had a strong sustainability plan. 53% said they would work harder if they knew they were making a difference. Now, in another study, you know, Thomas told you I do a lot of study about, you know, a lot of work in digital. And I was working with a group of leaders who were very interested about leadership and social media and being digital and being connected to their audiences. And I did some research about, because they were concerned about disconnected employees. So I did some research. I looked at, you know, the level of disconnection. There are lots of studies, lots of reports about it. And there's a little YouTube video on my LinkedIn that you'll see if you really want to look at how I got to the number. But I ran a calculation and I actually found the cost of that employee disconnection, because people aren't engaged at work, because they don't love what they're doing, they feel totally disconnected, was a whopping 21.5 billion per annum. And that was just in the UK. So can you imagine what that cost of disconnection, that disengaged employee looks like? So when you've got stats like 53% said they would work harder if they knew they were making a difference because they're invested, that really starts to hit the bottom line when we think about that big number. 1 in 10 said that they would take a pay cut to work at a more sustainable business. And Gen Z are the first generation to prioritize purpose over salary, with over 50% emphasis and belief that their job needs to have a social impact. And of course, environmental concern among Gen Z employees surged 128% over the past year, because of course, the pandemic has made us all just a little bit more aware of some of these challenges. So those shifts aren't going away. Gen Z, Gen Y, you know, I've got Gen Ys in my family. It's like living with Greta Thunberg. You know, they are so much more concerned and alarmed by what is going on that, you know, we've got to think about this future employee and the talent base as to what is coming through and who is going to win that talent. And of course, this is likely to make Thomas smile, the face of Larry Fink here, but, investors are demanding change. Investors are demanding it. And BlackRock are the world's largest asset management fund. And back in 2020, Larry Fink, in his letter to CEOs, kind of shook the business world when they advised that they were shifting their investment strategy to focus on sustainable investment. And they expected to see more sustainable investment in the portfolios and for organizations to have a more sustainable footprint. And of course, what we then saw since he announced that was a whopping 96% increase in sustainable investing. So what that goes to show is when these guys speak, ripples happen and change is impacted, because there's no doubt about it, money talks. Recently, his recent letter in 2021 to CEOs was about the fact, and it is a little bit ironic, that a single disclosure standard needs to be created. Because what I mean by that is, when I was researching for sustainable marketing, how to drive profits with purpose, I spoke to senior sustainable leads at KPMG, Ernst & Young, PricewaterhouseCoopers, all these big, large accounting consultancy firms, and saying, okay, so I'm just trying to get to what is the baseline that companies have to comply to so that they know that they're sustainable? What does that look like? And of course, there isn't any single disclosure. They can all kind of report things in a way that kind of suits them. There are certain parameters in certain industries. If you're in the fossil fuels industry, in the tobacco industry, there are some regulatory aspects. But really, and what Larry was calling out back in 2021, earlier this year in January, was that, whilst most companies are reporting on sustainability, they're doing a poor job in actually the efficiencies of their carbon emissions, how this is being reported, because there's just too much opportunity for misinterpretation and inefficiencies. So he is calling for this single global disclosure. And where I'd love to get to is a really even simpler system where you kind of have that red, amber, green, just like we have on food packaging. I'm sure you've got that in the US. We have it here in the UK. You can look at some food and you can kind of see what sugars and what salts are in there and say, is it all in the reds? Is it green? Is it amber? And we can make really simple, informed choices because we're making the complex simple for the consumer. And that's kind of what needs to happen. They are just playing around with this carbon labeling, so it is probably going to become a thing, but it needs to become simplified and it needs to become centralized. So there is this single disclosure, which is no mean feat, but, is doable. So consumers are calling for it, employees are calling for it, investors are calling for it, and of course it is good for business. Good business equals good returns. These are just a few studies, and there are numbers of studies that are out there now increasingly. The United Nations have been doing some research. They looked at sustainability activities versus organizations that weren't doing sustainability programs. And what they found was 20% enhanced sales, 50% reduction in employee turnover, 6% increase in share price, and a 13% increase in productivity. They found, as I alluded to earlier, that a winning strategy is one whereby a company identifies areas of social impact that really fit with its core strategy, products and services and operations, and then makes a commitment to dedicating resources and setting clear KPIs, etc., to follow that route. So again, that kind of aligns with what I'm saying. You can't just go off on a tangent. There has to be strategic fit for that to be successful. Unilever, as I mentioned earlier, they're removing brands that don't have a purpose from their portfolio because it's not just because they think it's a good thing and the decent thing to do. We would like to think that that was the only reason, but of course it's because that what they found is that those products that they have in their portfolio that do have a purpose are commercially outperforming those that aren't by 69%. So it's actually a commercial focus for them, as well as a good practice focus for them to focus on the fact that all their brands in their portfolio need to have a purpose. Oxford University, this study from 2019 looked at over 2,000 organizations, and they again were looking at organizations that had good sustainability practices and seeing how they performed versus those that didn't have, of comparable structure, didn't have good sustainability practices. And these are really significant numbers. They saw in these that did have sustainability practices 90% improved cost of capital, 88% improved operational performance, 80% positive influence on performance of shares. I mean, those are really big numbers. And then DuPont, an old kind of a case study here, but still very valid, because they started their sustainable program almost 30 years ago, really as a matter of risk reduction. It wasn't about doing good business, it was about risk. And what they identified was, the sustainable practice became a profit center. And now annually they report 2 billion in annual revenue from products that reduce greenhouse gas emissions, and 11.8 billion in revenues from non-depletable resources. So, the business case is solid for good business. And as I said earlier, I love that, to be frank, in a world on fire or underwater, it's difficult to sell anything. So we do need to be making these significant changes. The other thing, of course, that is impacting us as marketers and that we need to be very aware of is we have to do what we say. These green claims have become a minefield, and the Competitions and Markets Authority have warned businesses in the UK that they now have until the new year to make sure their environmental claims comply with the law. In the UK, they've just launched in October the Green Claims Code, and it comes into enforcement in January 2022. And you can see there are 6 questions here. Are your claims truthful and accurate? Are your claims clear and unambiguous? Do your claims omit or hide important information? Do they only make fair and meaningful comparisons? Have you substantiated your claims? And do they consider the full life cycle of a product? So that is looking at not just the direct impact and indirect impact of the people that are part of your product life cycle, but also those that are in your supply chain, which is often where most problems arise. And I've put there the Code of Federal Regulations because in the US, the Competitions and Markets Authority have been working with global authorities, including the Code of Federal Regulations. I think it's the FCA. And they are also alluding to similar claims, a similar code coming in early 2022. So I don't know where that is yet in the US, Thomas, and that might be something that you're more aware of than I am. The FTC, the Federal Trade Commission.
Right.
Yeah. So if it's not there already, it's coming. So there will be more regulation. And it's interesting, Alpro, they are actually taking action. Alpro, this oat milk, I don't think you're allowed to call it milk, this oat product, had this billboard on their bus. And this claim only came in on October the 1st. On October the 18th, this was on a poster on a side of a bus in the UK. Next stop, your recipe to a healthier planet. And on the other side of the billboard, it had good for the planet, good for you. And they were called out as the strapline was being misleading, and they were challenged on the basis that it was misleading because it could not be substantiated. They defended it, saying, they assumed people would know that it had a smaller footprint than dairy, but that was not good enough, and the campaign had to be pulled. And of course, you're not allowed to repeat campaigns that the ASA have said, that's not allowed. Here is, and of course, BlackRock, they were called out for their own greenwashing claims. They certainly were. And, this was almost at the same time as Larry Fink was saying, we need these single disclosures. And of course, then they were pushed back and people were digging into what they were doing because, their investment activities in the report claimed that the company had as much 85 billion invested in coal, whereas they were saying we want these more sustainable investments. So people, if you're saying something and if you're pretending that you're doing good, or you're purporting to do good, or sometimes if you just get it wrong, then you will be called out, because Brandalism is a real thing. It's no joke. Brandalism, I mean, we see these, this is from Greenpeace. They are going around and putting up billboards such as this at NatWest. We're creating vital loopholes to help polluters trade their pollution instead of cutting it. And I've been doing some work very closely with Clean Creatives. They're based in the US. Purpose Disruptors, again, have a big remit in the US. And they are both calling out with the Advertising Association authorities and various other associations around the world to really ensure that brands and agencies are, I mean, Clean Creatives are the people that created the F list, and the F list is a list of agencies around the world that are supporting fossil fuel advertising. So they're really kind of naming and shaming these organizations. So there is this movement, there is this shift, there is this Brandalism, and there are lots of people looking to move and shift the way marketing is put out into the world, particularly from an advertising perspective. So as a sustainable marketer then, it's not enough just to learn all of our marketing discipline. We have to stretch our marketing minds, and we have to really think about the wider, broader landscape, this responsible landscape that we are actually operating in, that the customers that we are the custodians on are operating in, and the brands that we are the custodians of are communicating into. So we have to understand things like the circular economy. What is ESG? What are the GRI reporting standards? What are the UN sustainable goals? What is a B Corp? What was the Paris Agreement? What does net zero mean? What is the triple bottom line? What is scope 1, 2, and 3? And what does that mean for the organizations that I'm serving? So that you really ask those questions and be informed about what it is that you do. So I've set you a little scorecard there, and it might be something that you want to work on, just to kind of sense check your own understanding of some of these things. Are you considering that organizational purpose in your marketing education? Is sustainability considered as a responsible operational lens when you're developing those marketing plans? Could you be stretching out and really considering those aspects? Are you familiar with the UN Sustainable Development Goals? Are you familiar with the Paris Agreement? What was agreed and what those commitments were required by those companies, and why? Why? Do you understand what scope 1, 2, and 3 means when it comes to carbon emissions and the responsibility that it means for business? Do you understand net zero? Is sustainability part of your organization's financial reporting? Because if, as a marketer, if you're working as the communicator and your finance team are putting out this report, I mean, you need to understand what they're saying about the business, because they could be creating a whole load of greenwash. And that is kind of what happened in the Larry Fink situation. He was coming out saying one thing, they had these portfolio things going over here in the other way. And it's almost like a case of the left arm not understanding what the right arm is doing. Are you aware of B Corp status and the B impact assessment and what that goes into, and the rigor and what is required by businesses? Do you understand these codes, these green claims codes, the DC regulations and the changes that are coming and what is expected? And are you aware of the circular economy and the service economy and what it could mean for the future development of products and services and the related messaging and communications that are necessary around those with your organization? So you can kind of give yourself a little score. If you get 100, then you've smashed it and you're doing brilliantly. If you get 20 or 50, and you'll be able to see, well, actually, I don't know really anything about that. And then you can just start to learn about it, because this is your operating landscape. This is the new business. This is business. This isn't a thing that sits on the side to business anymore, a nice little corporate social responsibility department that has a dingy little office that ticks boxes. This is now fundamentally being driven to the core of business strategy. So, as marketing strategy transcends and cascades out of business strategy, you have to be understanding these operational landscapes, this broader. And I'm sure there will be more. You know, I'm learning things myself all the time, but as a sustainable marketer, I'm committed to be stretched in this way to really understand what this means. So I've created this action plan for you, so you can really start to think about how you drive sustainable marketing inwards, which is all about being committed to constant education and driving that education, how you can drive this upwards, that if it isn't sitting strategically on that boardroom agenda, how you can work to embed that and drive that through the heart of the organization. And then the outwards, the communication piece, making sure that you are doing what you say you are doing, and there is this operational sustainable lens that overlays everything you communicate from a marketing perspective. So I won't run all of it there through you, but you will have this deck, and this is something that you may pick up on at another time. You may find it useful, you might want to explore it, you might want to pick it apart, you might want to challenge me on it, so whatever, it's a simple model that I just think frames things very practically for you.
And certainly the book goes into great detail, Michelle.
It does.
The book.
It does. The book is great. The book does go into great detail, and that's really a précis of bringing out some of the things, to kind of drive it inwards, upwards, outwards. This is a really good report that I recommend reading, because a lot of the messaging around climate and sustainability is negative. It's doom and gloom. And, I think it was Elmer Wheeler back in the 1940s that coined the phrase, sell the sizzle. And don't sell this, the steak or the sausage, sell the sizzle.
Sell the sizzle, not the steak.
That's right. And so what they've done in this great report, and I think this is a really nice, neat, simple report, is they've kind of put the conversation around climate as to how we can communicate this by selling the sizzle. The vision that this can be, if we get everybody moving in the, not the doom and gloom. And they talk about heaven and hell, it's, the most common message on climate change is that we're all going to hell. There's rising seas, there's scorched earth, there's failing floods, food supplies, there's flooding. But contrary to every expectation, hell doesn't actually sizzle. It actually can turn people off. They become overwhelmed. They check out. They don't do anything. So although those kind of Armageddon climate scenarios might be accurate and can be very eye-catching and emotive, they haven't changed attitudes or behaviors at all. In fact, they haven't. I mean, I was looking at some research out of the IPCC report. They haven't changed behaviors. So we have to explore the alternatives as to what does change behaviors. And we know what change behaviors is when people believe they can actually see it and feel something and make those changes and be part of it and be part of the solution. So what this report does, this nice document, is kind of flips the negativity and really, I think, gives marketers some great resource and great ideas to be thinking about how they frame some of the language, how they frame some of the opportunities. So I've left that in there for you as well, because I think it's quite a nice resource.
Awesome.
And of course, in my view, there's no one better placed to affect change, align with and influence customers, and drive hope for a better, more sustainable future than an educated and aware sustainable marketer. So stay educated. You can start by reading the book, which would be fabulous. But do tune in to the podcast, the Can Marketing Save the Planet podcast. We've interviewed lots of people, including Kotler. We have interviewed people on circular economy. We've interviewed people on finance. We've interviewed people who are in advertising. We've interviewed people in government, that are setting policies. There's a whole range and breadth of different kind of perspectives. And we always ask the question, can marketing save the planet? And it's a great discussion. But
it's a great podcast. I recommend it.
Thank you. But on there also, as marketers, there is a learning zone. So I've put together, there's over 35 or 40 resources. You'll find books in there, you'll find podcasts in there, you'll find really useful things, some of which I've, brought out in the talk for you today, but useful resources in the learning zone. So have a look in the learning zone, have a look at our Sustainable Marketer Manifesto, because just like doctors sign a Hippocratic oath before they are released into the world to start dealing with patients, my view is that marketers need to sign the Sustainable Marketer Oath, or the manifesto, which is kind of like a Hippocratic oath that has 3 commitments. And one is that you commit to continually educating yourself. Secondly, you commit to educating others. And then you commit to having the courage to call out poor practice and drive change. So have a look at the, if that sounds like your kind of thing, have a look at the manifesto, because it might be something that you think, yeah, that makes sense. I want to be a sustainable marketer and get on board with this different way of applying my skills in a way more responsible lens. And I loved what Cressy Wesling said. She was really the catalyst for me about the manifesto, because she said, how powerful would it be if marketing was to take away the voice from all of the negative stuff that is being done in the world? And, that is the voice. We are often the voice. We are giving voice and advocating a lot of that practice, sometimes unknowingly. It's not we're not to blame, we're just doing our jobs. But how powerful to turn around and drive that change inwards, to say it's not good enough to just do that. We now really have to have a much more responsible lens. So we are in a very, very powerful position. And as marketers, as budding marketers, learning about this great discipline, you are in a very powerful position to go forth and do some really great responsible marketing. So that's over and out from me. I'm going to stop sharing.
Thank you so much. I was giving a round of applause, everybody. Everybody, as you take that off, you take the, all right, you take, stop the sharing. So I want to see the faces. All right. So yep. Again, Michelle, thank you. That was killer. And I appreciate you sending the slides. And we'll share them out with the students. And by the way, when I first announced you as our special speaker, I linked to the manifesto. I think the manifesto is really cool. And I think it is something that before you become a marketer, you should look at it and consider signing. So without any further ado, I mean, the kids got to move on in 3 minutes and change to the next classroom. So you've covered our class well. Everybody, let's say thanks. Give her a round of applause as we head out the door. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
Thanks
My
so
pleasure.
much.
My
Thank
pleasure.
you.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
I hope that went okay, Thomas. And
Oh, it was awesome. It was awesome. I had technical difficulties. I don't know. I lost my screen.
Oh no.
Yeah, so I'm here, but I can't even see. I don't know what happened. I've had some problems with it lately.
Okay.
But anyway, I loved it, and I heard the whole thing. And so, if you want, I could send you the recording if you like. Certainly, a transcription, I can send that as well if you want it.
Brilliant. Okay, that's great. So, and if you need any of the deck, do you want me to send you the deck? Or
yeah, please send the deck.
I'll
the
send
deck
you
was
the deck.
killer. I love the 7 Ps, man. That was awesome.
Do you like that? Just stretching that out.
I like the way you lay it out, but I like the way you expanded it. Really, that's an awesome slide.
Yeah, cool. Well, you're welcome to share it.
All right, consider it done. I'm going to share it in my slides in class. Count it
Fantastic.
in there.
Yeah, fantastic.
All right, thank you so much.
Take care, Thomas.
Have a great weekend.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. And meeting for all. Okay, I can't. Oh, I'm getting dressed up for this. Oh, shit. I don't know what's going on with this thing, man.
What do you mean you don't get news?
There's something wrong with this. Zoom is still on.
Oh, Jesus. Yeah, you look really, really nice.
I was fucking wore a shirt. Jesus God.
No, you're in a nice shirt and tie, and that's all. I mean, you don't normally dress.
I don't care. Is this a problem?
Why are you getting so defensive?
Well, why are you acting so weird that I just put a shirt and a tie on?
That's weird. I'm just saying hello. You